So this is 6.6, the first video A, and this is over polynomial and rational inequalities. This is the last section of chapter 6, and the picture that I have here is at the bottom of page 493, and it is obviously the, let me get this bigger here, the function of y equals 144x minus 4e8x squared plus 4x cubed. Our degree of the polynomial is a 3, and that's why it looks like a cubic function, because it is. And so that is an equal. What we're looking for is, when is it greater than 0? Okay, so it is greater than 0 at a certain point on this graph. And what is greater than 0? The function is greater than 0. Y is greater than 0. So where does that happen? It starts here at 0, and it's above 0 here, and we get down to 6, and then it's above 0 here. So a couple things to notice. It is not above 0 here. It is at 0. It is not above 0 at 6. It is at 0. So it's somewhere between 0 and 6, but it does not include 0 or 6. And it is also above 0 after 6. So we have 0, 6, and we also have 6 to infinity. Both of those places, but not at 6 and not at 0, and obviously not to the left of 0, because my y value is below 0, so it's not greater than 0, obviously. Okay, so that's what we're looking at. Whoops, sorry that turned. So we're looking at all of the x values that give us a y value of a positive number, greater than 0. Okay, so solving polynomial inequalities. I love it when they give me rules. 1. We write an equivalent inequality with 0 on one side and with the function f of x on the other. So in other words, we write this with our function value, our f of x or v of x or g of x, we make that 0. Okay, so let's look at example 1 and follow these rules as we go, and it's just easier to have an example there. Sorry, I am sitting in a parking lot at the Aspen Suite Hotels waiting for my wife to get out of the doctor's office in Kenai. So if you hear a lot of noise, that's what's going on here. Alright, so here is my formula they give me for example 1. And this is my cubic function that I just had written on here. Okay. What it's asking is use factoring and then find values of x that give positive values for v of x. Okay, so we want that number to be, we want this, when we solve it, to be a positive number. We do not want it 0. We do not want it in the negative range. So we're looking for numbers that are basically greater than 0. So what does it say? Write an equivalent inequality with 0 on one side with the function on the other. So I'm going to write that as 0 equals 144x minus 48x squared plus 4x cubed. So notice I really didn't do anything except make my v of x, my function, a 0. Okay? So once I do that, I then write it as an inequality. So I'm going to change this. And what did it say? It said that he wanted this equation bigger than the one on the left, bigger than 0. They wanted it to be a positive number, and it's not greater than or equal to, because we don't want it to be 0, because 0 is a positive. It says that we want positive values of x. We want to find out what numbers we can put in here for x that when we plug it into our calculator, we're going to get a number, we're going to get an answer, we're going to get a y value that's greater than 0. Step 2 says solve f of x equals 0. So I'm going to change this around a little bit. I'm just going to rewrite it so that my 4x cubed is in the front. And it says I'm supposed to make it equal to 0. There we go. Alright, so I'm going to look at this, factor out what I can. Actually, I wrote that wrong. 4x, and I have x squared minus 12x plus, take a 4 out of 144, 36. Okay, and I just keep factoring away because it said solve it. Going to see if I can factor it with simple factoring rather than using quadratic formula, and I can. Negative 6 times 6 is 36, and negative 6 plus negative 6 is negative 12, so that works. Alright, so what are my values here? 4x equals 0, x minus 6 equals 0, x minus 6 equals 0. So this one, and this one, and this one. And because we already have this once, we don't have to include it twice. It just has a multiplicity of 2. So there's my answer, 0 and 6. So what does that tell me? That tells me that my answers are 0 and 6, but it doesn't tell me which numbers. Numbers less than 0, between 0 and 6, or numbers greater than 6. And that's what we're going to do in this next part of the example. So if you remember from a while back, gosh, what lesson was it? Anyway, it was that time where we had a number line, and let me use blue here, where we had a number line, and we had 0 and 6, and it divided, our answer divided our number line up into 3 different sections. So we tried, what we're doing is we're really just looking at the signs. So we're looking at 4x. Okay, so when the numbers are smaller than 0, our 4x, let's move this down a little bit, I'm going to need some room. Our 4x is going to be a negative answer, okay? No matter what number I put in here for x, if it's a negative number, it's going to give me a negative answer. If I put a number between 0 and 6 in here for x, what am I going to get? Well, we give it a shot. We just come up with a number. 3. 3 times 4 is positive 12. So in this interval, we get a positive number. And over here, if it's a number bigger than 6, we'll put it in here. What do we get? We get a positive answer here. And that's all we care about, is it positive or negative. We try x minus 6. If we put a negative number from anywhere in here in for x, so like negative 3 minus 6 is negative 9, we get a negative number. If we put a number somewhere between 0 and 6, so let's say we put a 3 in here, we also get a negative number. And when we put a number from 6 and up in here, we will always get a positive number. Alright, so now we look at the whole thing. And when we put a number less than 0 in here for x, so let's say we put negative 1 in here on each of these, and we multiply everything together, we get a negative answer. When we put a number between 0 and 6 in here for x, we get a positive number. And when we put a number greater than 6 in here for x and do our multiplication, we also get a positive number. Okay, so what does that tell us? It just tells us what signs we get, all right? Because we're looking at what numbers, and I'm going to move this up, what numbers make 144x minus 48x squared plus 4x cubed, what numbers make our answer bigger than 0? Okay, well this graph, or this little positive negative thing that we did here, will tell me what x values will make our answer greater than 0. And if you look at this top row here, numbers between 0 to 6 and numbers from 6 to infinity give me positive answers, okay, for this whole thing here. So therefore I know that my solution is all numbers. I'm going to do this in interval notation, do it in black, 0 to 6, and that unions 6 to positive infinity. So all of those numbers are going to work. But now we need to look at the common sense to this problem. Alright, so it says a box can be formed by cutting a square out of each corner of a piece of tin and folding the sides up. If the piece of tin is 12 inches by 12 inches and each side of the square that is cut out has a length of x, the function that gives the volume of the box is, they give it to you. Okay, so if you are cutting out pieces of the corner, it's impossible to cut squares longer than 6 inches. So therefore, this one isn't going to work for the problem. Okay, it gives you a solution, it's an answer, but it doesn't give you an answer to this particular problem, because this particular problem has to do with a box, real life stuff, and you can't cut squares larger than 6 inches, so our x value being larger than 6 is not going to work. So our answer ends up being 0 is less than x, which is less than 6. And that's what we get there. Okay, so I'm assuming that when you do this the first time, you're like, oh my gosh, this is so confusing. So that's why we're going to do yet another one, so that hopefully we can get the confusion down to a minimum. And really there's only 2 examples in this whole section. Okay, the one we just did and one more. So I'm going to go ahead and shut this off and do a second video rather than try to do a 20-25 minute video. So anyway, that's it for 6.6a, and be all excited for 6.6b.